And let me just, okay, let me set the sharing of the screen so that multiple people can share. Hello, David.
Hello.
So I'm calling the meeting of the Six-Town Regional Planning Board Finance Transportation Facility Subcommittee meeting to order today, July 13th at 4:34 p.m. We are meeting over Zoom because of the continuing pandemic situation. And we are recording the meeting. All votes and other actions such as attendance will be taken by roll call. And I will start with a roll call attendance. Jane Dutcher.
Present.
Lynn Reynolds. Can you say present, Lynn?
She's on mute.
I guess you're muted.
Yes, we had a little bit of a ARFI going on. I didn't want you to do that. So yes, I'm here.
Thank you. David Young.
Here.
And Greg Snedeker.
Here.
And Mike Naughton is here. We also have Mark Abrahams and Matt Abrahams of the Abrahams Group, and Cassie Dunkeller from the Gilmontague Regional School District Committee as a prospective new member of our board. Next item on the agenda is minutes. We did receive minutes for what I believe is the June 15th meeting earlier today, though they were marked July 15th.
Oh.
And I personally have not had a chance to look at them any further than noticing that. So
I read through them. I thought they were okay.
Okay.
So
well, I'll leave
I
it
would
up to
move-
the. Sorry.
move to accept with your correction.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, I mean, I'd be happy to table them till next week if other people want to look at them. But also happy to have a vote if that's the way people want to go. Okay, hearing nothing, all in favor?
Aye.
Jane Dutcher,
Aye.
Lynn Reynolds,
Aye.
David Young,
Aye.
Greg Snedeker,
Aye.
and I'm going to abstain because I really haven't had a chance to take a look at them. Okay, we do not yet have minutes from our June 22nd meeting. So we'll leave that on the agenda for next time. And at this point, we'll move on to progress update from the Abrahams Group. Did everybody receive the email sent out just about an hour ago with an updated file from Matt and also some notes on that file?
Yes.
I
Okay,
received it, but I just looked at it just
Right.
this minute.
okay. Well, yeah, I have not had a chance to look at it in any detail. So Matt, you wanna start in here?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about it, Mike. I'll defer to my dad though, just real quick. Dad, did you have anything you wanted to mention on an introductory basis before we move into the file? He's in the other room. I heard him say no. He's on mute. Okay. Yes, so I'm glad the file was sent out ahead of time. Thank you for helping out with that, Mike. I do realize that because of the timing of the file going out today, just a few hours before the meeting, it is completely understandable that people have not had a chance to really look at it yet. But at least we have the opportunity today to walk through it a little bit, and you can get a sense of where we are with it and whether you like the new approach. And if you do, then we're going to build off that and have a few more updates to go into this file. It wouldn't be a heavy lift at this point. And at least we'll be going down what I think is the path that you most recently directed us to go down. So that's really the main goal with going through this today for me, is to see if this reflects your most recent wishes for what you want the file to look like. And if so, then we'll continue down this path. So I'm planning on walking you through it at a high level and await feedback on what you think about the new approach. I'm going to share my screen now. All right, so just a little refresher before you start looking too deeply at what's on the screen in front of you. What we talked about last time was we started focusing on presenting the data at a location or a departmental level. And we generally liked that approach. We liked that a lot. But at the time, we didn't have a way to allow a user to tweak what should be in the budget and what should not be in the budget. It was really a process that I put together, and then I had summarized it. The group that's on the call today was interested in a way to make changes on what we're calling like a worksheet or a detailed sheet. So what we've done is we've gone back, to the drawing board, so to speak, and created a very busy detailed sheet that allows you the opportunity to do that. And those changes would then flow to the summary sheets. And I'll show you the summary sheets in a second. So what we're looking at right now is our attempt at that detail or worksheet. And the way that we did it was we wanted to really provide all the possible expenditure line items based on DESE supported coding. So you may recall, going back a few weeks now, that I shared with you that Word document. It's called Chart of Accounts. And in it are the different function codes that DESE supports currently, really on the end of the year report, and the different state object codes that are that correspond to those function codes. Not all function codes are going to have all state object codes. For example, we're looking at school committee right in front of us, that 1110. That does not have a state object code of 1 professional salaries available because there are no professionals that work on school committee. That's just an example of a state object code that is not compliant with a certain function code based on DESE's coding. So we basically have built a very long list of possible expenditure line items based on all the different possibilities that DESE supports. So you'll see going left to right, we have function code. That's the first one. So focus on the green headers. Function code, state object code, which again is your professional salaries, your other salaries, your contracted services, supplies, expenses. And then program, which is your regular day, your SPED, and the common undistributed if it's not going to be classified as regular day or SPED. And then location. Now location from an end of the year standpoint really only matters when you're talking about instruction, function code 2000, any function code in the 2000 range. It does matter for other function codes. Like for example, if you're going to look at electricity, you might have electricity based at the building level rather than just one total level. But in terms of reporting on the end of the year report, location only matters for the function code 2000 in the 2000 series. So that's why I have it as NA right here in front of you for any function code that's not 2000. You'll see that as we go downward. So I'll just show you real quick that there's a lot here. There are a lot of possible different line items based on the different possibilities that I mentioned earlier. I mean, I'm already up to 1,000 right now, and I'm only in the 2400s. I'll scroll all the way to the bottom. So it goes down to about row 2000 or so. Now, in any school budget, you'll never see all of these lines populated in terms of an expenditure. But we at least wanted to give you the functionality or the flexibility in order to do that if, you know, if you wanted to choose expenditures that the districts don't currently have funded or in their budget. Now you have all the different possibilities laid out in front of you. So once we got this list in here for all the different possibilities, we wanted to really have a starting point for what a budget might look like. So we went back to what the current districts have in their budget and we populated that. So if you look out here to the right, the first dollar amount column is column J, and I have it as general fund. I just focus on general fund now. And based on what is in the district's budgets, I put those dollar amounts here. And in order to distinguish between the different districts, I did do a column out here to the left in column A of whether those dollar amounts are currently attributable to Gil Montague or currently attributable to Pioneer Valley. Now I know that once a combined region budget is put together, you're not going to have both for all the functions. You know, for example, school committee, you're not going to have two different school committees. You're not going to have two different superintendent offices. But just as a starting point, I included everything here, and it's easy to take them out at this point if you wanted to. So you can see I have highlighted here the different Gil Montague rows, and I've highlighted here the different Pioneer Valley rows for school committee. And you can see the dollar amounts over here. So let's just take,
Matt, can I ask a quick question?
yes, you can.
While you're on this point, if let's say we had the business office and it worked out of both districts. Let's say some services were out of Pioneer and some were out of Gil Montague. Would it be really easy to just insert one of those columns to account for that, or do we give it a new name?
So why don't you be a little bit more specific about the change you have in mind?
Well, let's
Or
say,
answer.
for example, you had a treasurer in one place and you had one business office. Let's say you had accounts payable in a different business office.
Yep.
But we haven't formed the district yet, but we were trying to, keep track of one. Maybe we come back to you and ask you to develop a form just for the split kind of things. But is that something that could be easily inserted?
Well, the way that I would recommend that you do that, first off, you should have every option here for you already. But the way that I
Okay.
recommend that particular scenario that you just described, here's the business and finance office right here. And you
Mhm.
have a row for each of the possible expenditures based on state object code. You have your professional salaries, your clerical,
Mhm.
you have an option for contracted services, although there are none currently budgeted. You have supplies and materials, you have other expenses. Those dollar amounts are over here. So what I would recommend would be that you determine what dollar amount you want to include for each of these rows. So if you are currently have salaries that are $130,000, but you feel like you don't need $130,000, you figure out what that dollar amount is, and you could just make that change here. You can just change to $100,000 if you wanted to, for example.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would recommend that. I don't think you need to do any inserts because I tried to build this in such a way that you had all the different possible expenditure line items here already. Now,
Okay, all right.
are you basically saying that you want to see it more detailed than this, Alan, with that question?
No. I think what you have is perfect for starters. I was just envisioning, let's say we didn't combine districts yet, but we were piloting some of the services out of Gil Montague and some of the services out of Pioneer. Was there a easy, how we approach that? But we can talk about that later. And I just want to know if it was an easy insert. It sounds like maybe a more of a different conversation at another time.
Yep.
I don't know.
Well,
Well,
Alan, can I just speak up and say that what you're describing, based on what Matt said, sounds pretty straightforward to me. So I just want to make sure I understand what we're being told here. Um, this sheet has every combination of object code and function code. And whatever arrangement, if Gil Montague and Pioneer remain two districts, they will have two separate budgets, but every item in each of their budgets will have some object code, function code, whatever combination, and therefore will have a place on this sheet somewhere. So if the business offices were completely separate, there would be places for all the expenses of each business office somewhere on this sheet. And if the business offices were combined in some way, there would still be a place for every, every budgeted item in the combined business office somewhere on this sheet. Am I missing something here?
I think
That sounds
Alan's
good.
talking about a new concept,
Yes,
not one that we've discussed before.
Well, you mean sharing services?
Yeah, we're supposed to be looking at a new district, people. I keep telling you that. It sounds like a broken record, but
Well, Ellen was talking about still having two separate districts, I thought.
no, he's talking about combining services prior to having a district. I believe.
Correct.
That's what I heard.
That's
And
right.
I just don't see why
Yes.
this wouldn't, it seems to me that, yes, this would handle this.
Yeah, and on this particular detail tab, we still have the Gil Montague Pioneer Valley breakdown. So based on what Alan was saying, you could technically put a dollar amount for the Gil Montague rows and also put a dollar amount for the Pioneer Valley rows. And that would satisfy his thinking that, okay, if we're thinking location wise, that would do a proper breakdown in his mind, I think.
yeah, no, that's good. Thank you. You answered the question. I appreciate it.
Okay, yep, no problem. So going downward, you'll see as we get into the 2000 series, that's when the location comes up. And you'll also see more programs used. Up top, undistributed was used pretty often before we get into the 2000 series. But once you get into the 2000 series, that's where you start seeing your regular day and your special education. And if you're going to use both as possibilities, then that means those rows get bigger. And also when you start throwing different locations in, like here you see your first Gill Elementary, then you see your first Hillcrest, your first Sheffield. All those different possible combinations for function code 2110 are the reasons why you see several different rows for 2110. Now, there aren't many that actually have dollar amounts in them, as you can see as we go up and down here, but those possibilities are here. Now, like I said earlier, we're looking at 2,000 different rows, but as I scroll, there aren't really that many rows that are populated. So what if you just want to focus on the ones that are? You easily could go here using the filters and you just get rid of all the blank rows, and now you're focused on just what's been funded. Okay, so now we're down to 347 rows as opposed to 2,000. So every row that has a dollar amount in the current budget for either district is now showing in front of you, and it's a little bit easier to scroll through that. Okay, and it's it's Excel functionality. If you want to go back to it, you just clear the filter. It's 2 clicks. Okay. And just so you know, down at the bottom, I did do some double check of what the totals were just to make sure that I was matched up against the budget data that I'm currently using. So that's all set. That's been validated. But again, this is a first pass pulling in their budgets. Like I said, the combined region budget is not going to look the same as this is, but it's a starting point. At this point, you can start moving things around if you wanted to. Okay. So this is the detail tab. Any questions, comments on this at this point? It might be your first exposure to it, but Any questions, comments? I'm going to move to the other tabs if there are none.
Well, a quick comment and a question. I mean, this looks good to me, Matt. And one of the requirements was that we do start with each district's budget. So that's what you're doing here, and that's good.
Okay. Great.
How do the information from the individual budgets get put on this sheet?
So I use formulas. You don't see the formulas here because it was a sum if formula and I was pointing to a different file. If I had kept them in here, when I sent them off to you, I think you would have seen errors in the files that you received earlier today. That's why I didn't include the formulas here, but I do have another file that have the formulas. But where I pulled them from was from the prior version of the version of the file that we last reviewed together prior to this one. And in there have the different budget data for each of the districts. So once I saw the validated totals at the bottom that matched what I had in there, I was satisfied.
Okay, I guess I just want to make sure that, I mean, I know that you're still working on this. But one of the things we were looking for is the ability to start with the two districts' budgets and somehow, somehow ourselves create this sheet or have this, cause this sheet to be created using the tool. And so I just don't want to lose sight of that piece of it.
Hello.
And one of the reasons for that was that depending on how long this process goes on, and it does seem to keep going on and on, we might at some point want to look at FY23 budgets, or, and would we be able to ourselves create a version of this based on the FY23 budgets? So I'll just toss that out there as an observation.
Yeah, it's definitely doable. The way that I have it set up now would be a very manual process to do that. You'd be typing in a lot of numbers.
Well, that's what we
but-
want to avoid. That's
Right.
what was intended to avoid.
Yep. Yep. So let me see if I can answer that question with a question, Mike. I think what you're saying is if we were to have this tab reference an actual budget from the districts and link to that, that would get us what you're looking for? Yeah.
Well, I think the short answer is yes. I mean, another way to do it, we had talked about possibly using macros, and that would be another way to do it. And I'm not going to recommend one way or the other. My question is, when you guys are out of the picture, will there be a way for us to do it other than manually copying and pasting numbers from
Yeah.
the budgets into here?
Right.
Is that what your formula file does, Matt? Your formula file loads all of this data?
The formula file uses formulas to populate the dollar amounts in column J.
Okay, but all right. So if we wanted to populate column J with the 2023 budget when it comes out, we would just delete everything in column J and then employ your formula file to refill column J.
Yep, that's one way to do it. Just in full disclosure, so everyone knows, it wasn't a completely smooth process because the different budget files have function codes that aren't necessarily supported by DESE. So I manually changed those, and not in the district budget, but in an intermediary file that I had, almost like a crosswalk file that I had. So that process would be necessary in the future as well, unless the districts changed their budget files to reflect the actual true function codes. So that's just an FYI related to that. It's not as smooth as you may be thinking on the surface.
Okay, can we get like notes on how that was done?
Sure.
Or do you have a simpler way to do it? I'm sorry, David, go ahead.
Well, I've been aware for a long time that Pioneer's accounts don't align with DESI. Did you find the same true at GM, or was it just Pioneer?
It was more at Pioneer than it was at GM. I definitely had to make some changes at the GM level. It wasn't necessarily the function codes, it was more the state object codes that they were using were not valid with the different function codes. So for example, they might have had a 2 for clerical salaries that was not supported at that function code level. So I would need to change it to a different state object code, for example.
So for $10 an hour, we can get you to reload it.
And I would be willing to help if necessary.
So Matt, all of this lines up with the end of year reporting, correct? All the function codes, the object codes and so forth. I'm assuming that all lines up with the report at the end of the year that all the districts do and that your dad does workshops on.
Yes, that was in my mind, one of the pros or the positives of doing it this way was these codes actually truly reflect the latest end of the year report. So if you were to look at the end of the year report and look at function code 1110 committee, you're going to see that state object codes through 2 through 6 are supported, 1 is not. And you're going to see that for program, it's only undistributed as an option. You don't get regular day,
perfect.
You don't get SPED as an option for those. Whereas if you come down here a little bit further, and you look at legal settlements, for example, you'll notice that the program changes to regular day and special education as options because those are the ones that are supported for that function code. Undistributed is not. So yes, the time was taken to make sure that this list reflected and matched what's on the end of the year report.
So Tanya,
Perfect, thank you.
Tanya had talked to me about redoing her chart of accounts, but that became moot when she resigned.
Well, that's probably something that we'll want to pursue as we move forward with a new business administrator or someone that provides a service.
It's my understanding that 1/2 of the workload of the technology department at Pioneer is working to get the legacy system to report to DESI. So that would be a good thing to do because an awful lot of retail trade is going on for something that should be able to be generated with a push of a button.
Yeah, based on my experience working through this, I can see why. There has to be a decent amount of manual work that's done, or there has to be a crosswalk that exists to link the different account numbers to what needs to be on the end of the year report. Okay. So what I'm hearing is thinking ahead to getting this file updated and usable for future budgets. There needs to be a seamless process in place and instructions provided in order to help that process take place. So I will make sure that is done.
That sounds good. I would say that seamless, given what you said about unsupported codes and so on.
Yeah.
I think seamless may turn out to be a topic of discussion. Maybe it'd be better to say documented and as little manual work as possible.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it.
So
Thank you.
that, I mean, if we have to tweak things in the budgets, change things around so that the formulas find them. I personally, I mean, the rest of the committee can express an opinion here. My own feeling is I'm willing to do that, but I don't want to have to like start out by trying to guess where that needs to be done. But
Mhm.
if you've already gone through that exercise, I'd like to have the guidance to know what needs to be done to each budget
Yep.
to be able to pull it in so that the numbers do match.
Okay.
Matt, can I ask you to back up and show me how you adjusted that column J? How you deleted all the unfilled lines? Was that
Yeah,
on a sword?
Have you ever used a filter before in Excel?
I don't
little-
remember.
These little drop downs here, there's this little caret thing at the top of each of these columns.
Yeah, okay. No, I don't use that.
So if you click on this,
Yeah.
it's a very handy feature in Excel, very handy, and I highly recommend using it for large data sets whenever you can.
Uh-huh.
You know, for example, over here, if you wanted to, you could just look at the Gil Montague stuff. You can get rid of all the Pioneer stuff by using a filter. Okay.
Oh, good.
I'm clearing that. If you wanted to look at one function code only, let's see, you just want to look at teachers, 2305. You could do that.
Uh-huh.
It gets rid. It basically hides everything else. It's still there. It's just hiding it.
Great. Hey, I learned something. I've ignored that arrow forever.
So I wanted to show you that because there's so many rows of data here, and many of them are not used at the moment.
Yep.
That if you just wanted to focus on the ones that had dollar amounts, you basically uncheck the zero. That little dash means $0, and it'll only include all the ones that have dollar amounts.
Uh-huh. Super. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Dane,
Okay.
you'll be playing tonight.
Well, it's funny. I use Excel all the time, but there are some things that you just ignore because you don't want to spend time learning something new. So
Mhm.
you do it your old slow way.
Excel is a very
Great.
powerful. It's a very powerful tool, and
Yeah. I love it.
There's an incredible amount of functionality in here, and I consider myself pretty good at Excel, and I know that I only know a small amount of what it can do.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, sure, no problem. All right, so let's look at the other tabs now, unless there are further questions here. Oh, actually, let me just point out one other thing. Because of the way I have the view right now, it's a little bit tricky to do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make this general fund column smaller for a second. So out here to the right, I do have other columns in place. I haven't used them yet, but there are funding sources besides the general fund that are used in the district budgets. And that would be the area that those would be defined out here to the right. And again, I haven't populated them yet. I will, but I just wanted you to be aware that even though we're currently focused on the general fund, and that makes up a very large portion of the budgets, there are other funding sources, and we will be accounting for them out to the right. Okay. So let's take one step further. Let's get a little bit more summary level at this point. So this tab is showing you all the different expenditures in the FY22 budgets for Gil Montague and for Pioneer Valley, right?
Mhm.
This tab I'm calling Summary All Locations at the moment. So this would be everything, but without a location defined. So you may recall last time we were starting to look at tabs, you know, by school, by the superintendent's office, by technology. We started talking about by transportation, different locations or different departments that make sense so that you can look at each individually. This tab is not there yet. This is still at the summary level with everything included. But what I've done is I've eliminated the Gil Montague Pioneer Valley breakdown. So if you're looking at superintendent salaries, for example, this row, that 268,000 is not one of the districts or the other, it's both of them combined. Okay, so these this is a sum if formula that's pointing back to the tab that we were just looking at. So if we go back to that tab and we look at the two different superintendent salaries rows, which are right here, look at those dollar amounts. That's your 128 and that's your 140. If you combine the two down here at the bottom, you see this 268, 017.5. So there it is, 268, 017.5. So this is basically taking both the Gil Montague and the Pioneer Valley data together and showing you it, showing everything together on this tab. So just to show you, a change that could take place, let's just say, for example, that you are ready to, we've already talked about this. There's no need to have, in a combined region, you're not going to have two different superintendent offices, right? So let's say you wanted to start making those changes to reflect that, you could simply just zero out or delete one of the superintendent values. And if you go back to the other tab, you're going to have just what remains over here. Okay. Everyone with me so far on that? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Great. So to take it one step further, these next two tabs are my first attempt at getting at the location or the departmental level using this new setup. All right, so I did one for superintendent office and I did one for, I'm calling it other central office for now. I haven't done the schools yet, but this is where I am with this. So you'll see on this tab, even though it looks the same right now, until I start scrolling, there are only a few function codes here. It actually stops at 1230. Okay, so I purposely set up this tab so it only included ones that I thought had to do the superintendent's office. So you got the school committee, you got the superintendent function code of 1210, you got the assistant superintendent function code of 1220, and the function called 1230 for other district-wide administration. Okay. And if we get rid of that and just show the dollars, it's $567,000 here. Again, this is with both district superintendent offices still in that details tab. If you were to eliminate some of the dollars there, it would reflect here as well. Okay. Now, just to show you, I think you've probably gotten the gist of this already, but just to show you another piece here, if you look here, this school committee row, which is for other salaries, which means salaries that are not clerical in this case, this currently has a $0 amount. If you decided that you wanted to include some dollar amounts there, you could come back to this detail tab and say, nah, we need $50,000 for that. Type it in yourself, and then you're going to see it flow over here. So now it shows up there. And if you were to go to the main, that all locations tab, you would see it here as well. So again, the purpose of this file. Yep, go ahead, Alan.
Go. Well, okay, before you reiterate the purpose. So just to make sure I understand it. So if you go back down to the bottom where it said other district salaries and it said like $16,000, if you want to see an itemized point of that, is there an easier way can you show the way down the bottom? Okay, pick anyone, pick the 16. So if you want to see the breakdown of the other, how would you do that again? You would do what?
To break down the other, meaning what specific expenses make up that
what other expenses gives you the 16,000? Is there a way you can just quickly itemize and it just shows it, or do you have to look at each one of the functions that is going to contribute to that?
Okay, so this is taken from the budget. I don't have the budget in this file.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
No, hang on. So this is coming from Pioneer Valley.
Yeah.
Gil Montague has not contributed to that dollar amount. So that would be something that is in their budget and defined this way. Now, again, it's a budgeted amount, so it's not something that was actually spent. Now, what budget line items in their budget make this up? I wouldn't know that without looking at their budget.
Okay, that's my
But-
answer. Okay, yeah,
I don't see a reason why we couldn't also pull the budgets into this file and then you could go there if you wanted to.
yeah, that's what I thought we were doing, but I don't want to derail what Mike has kind of set up. I thought if we wanted to tie back and see, okay, what were the other expenses they had, it would just itemize and we could see that. Now, if this is a general area and so it really doesn't, we don't really know until they actually tag it with an invoice, then I guess you know, if they're just putting in an amount that this is what we're going to budget for things we forgot about, then it's going to be pretty hard to identify until it gets activated.
Right, and these are budgeted numbers, so you're not gonna be able to find
Yeah.
actual expenditures that are tied to those
Right.
amounts.
Right.
The only
Okay.
thing I could really get you a little bit more detail would be what line items in the district budgets are we looking at?
Yeah. Okay. Well, Mike may want that, may not. I'll leave that up to his discretion.
I don't see a reason why we couldn't pull the budgets in here because it's just a little bit more information if you wanted to look at it.
I think it'd
see a
be
reason-
helpful. But- Okay.
Alan, I don't see a reason not to do that. People have expressed concerns in the past about the size of the file. And I guess that would be my only possible concern is if we put everything into one file that we would like to see somewhere, that file might become so big that it's unwieldy. And then that would be a problem and we'd have to figure something out. But I personally like the idea of tying all the numbers, at least on the combined region budget details sheet, which I guess we're looking at now, to go back to the individual district budgets in some kind of fairly easily traceable form. Even if it means in a separate budget file, sitting in the same folder or whatever.
So Matt, that's what you just said you could do, correct?
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna defer to Matt here. He's really, I mean, there are a lot of different ways to produce the results that we're looking for. And I'm kind of the feeling that, you know, we all have our ideas, but too many cooks spoil the soup. You know, I defer to Matt about what the best way to achieve that objective is, but having the objective to be able to tie numbers on these sheets back to the actual budgets from the districts, I definitely think that would be useful.
Yeah,
So
no
I think
question.
we're on the same page there.
Yep, I agree. And then Alan, one step further, if you wanted to dive a little deeper, see what the origin of that number was, you would have the ability to look at the budgets.
All right, thanks.
Yep. No problem. Okay. And then the only other tab that I could show you would be this other central office tab, which really is just a few more rows. Other central office in this case means the business office, human resources, and then anything legal. I know that there may be other things in a central office like transportation or a technology office, for example, but those are going to be on their own tabs. So, but you know, this is just kind of a start for what the different location and the different departmental tabs could look like. And I just wanted to show you how everything flowed and, you know, just to see if you thought this was the right approach based on all the discussions we've had recently.
It looks
So-
good. What do you think, Mike?
So Mike, that was all I was planning on showing you today. I'm happy to walk through it more if people want to see more, but that's really the gist of everything that we have so far in this file.
Matt, I have a question.
Yep.
I I'm using superintendent.
Yep.
And I'm clicking on the column J, the 268,000,
Yep.
and then I'm highlighting it. And I expected to go to combined region and see the numbers that are going into that highlighted, and they're not.
So the combined region budget details tab is where you want to make your changes, Jane. That's meant to be your worksheet, the one to the far right.
Right, but that's not what I mean. That line is pointing to all the cells that go into that total. And I thought if I clicked on that cell and then clicked on the line up at the top, that it would highlight those cells on the combined page.
Oh, no, I don't think that happens. No.
Doesn't happen in mine. I'm not going to update.
Do you want to show me what you mean? Maybe I can recreate on the screen right now.
Well, how can I? All right, so
Maybe.
I'm on the summary superintendent's office.
Yep.
And I clicked on column I, 8. Let me do this again.
Yep.
So I highlighted that. And after I highlighted it, I moved up to the data line at the top where you do your actual entry. And I clicked on that.
Yep.
And that highlights the formula.
Yep.
And when I do that in my own spreadsheets, I can then go to one of those pages, combined region in this case, and those cells would be highlighted.
Okay. I'm not sure that happens though, because as soon as I clicked on the other tab, the formula went away.
Yeah, but if you click back on the summary tab, it'll still be highlighted. It's just not highlighting those. Maybe it's because it's a sum if S.
Yeah, it could be. It could be.
I thought I was so smart. I was going to find out how you did this.
Jane, I've seen
You're
that.
going to make it harder for me.
I'm happy to teach you what
I've
I
seen
did.
that happen if you're linking a cell from one sheet to another sheet.
Yes, I do it all the time.
Right, and then if you go to if you highlight the cell on the first sheet, on the one that's been linked to, and then you go back to the sheet where it's linked from, you can see the cells that are there.
Right, but
I'm not an
on
expert
this,
on Excel, but that's where I've seen that happen, but maybe it doesn't happen with all formulas.
it's not happening here, and that's why I'm wondering if I'll try that formula in one of my spreadsheets and see if it behaves the same way.
And there are no secrets here. I'm happy to
I-
explain to you what I did. If you really want to learn how to use the formula, that's fine with me.
Yeah. Well, I picked on that because I thought, well, actually, the other district, the one at the bottom, the other expenses, I was playing with that and I couldn't see it. So I said, oh, well, I know what goes into superintendent, so I'll click on that one and I'll know exactly what I'm looking for. And I did know what I was looking for, but the sheet didn't tell me. Anyway, something for me to do in my spare time. If I solve it, I'll let you know.
Okay.
Matt, I'm looking at the budget details sheet.
Yep.
And I'm not seeing subject.
Right. So, good point, Mike. That was something I meant to mention and failed to. So we talked about subject at the teacher level, and we had spent time on getting those classified for the different teachers, and we were fairly comfortable with that. That work was still done, has been done, as you know, it was in the other file. I haven't yet pulled in the list of teachers, so we could have another tab, and I'm planning on having another tab that would have that list of teachers that would feed the appropriate line items here for the teachers. So that was going to be a next step in this process for me, was to get that data in here, and then we can continue to look at the subject level.
Okay.
Do you see a need for subject beyond what we already established in the teacher list?
No, I don't. But I'm looking ahead to when we start playing with a budget for a combined region and sort of trying to wrap my head around the process that we'll be using it, when we, basically to try to make adjustments to different things.
Yep.
Like adding teachers in one area or removing administration. It looks as if, I was figuring that based on what you said, we'd be going to this combined region budget details sheet. And if we decide that we want to have one superintendent at X salary, we would find your superintendent lines and, do whatever we needed to do to have them combined to that salary number.
Yep. So the list that we currently have is, we have the teacher list. We don't have one that would include the superintendent. So we were looking at superintendent as being a different way to change it. You would just go to the line items here on this tab
Right.
and make the changes there.
Okay. And I was just thinking, well, okay, now suppose we decide we want to add more world languages, where would we go? And I wasn't seeing a place. So it sounds like that's coming.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's what we wanted to hear.
We did create all that other functionality on the other tab. We should use it for sure. We just haven't gotten it in here yet.
Right. Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. I just, I wasn't,
Yep. What about the general flow? And in the approach that was taken here to try and satisfy what we had heard last time during our meeting. Does the group generally feel that this is on target and something that we can work with here?
I do.
Yes, I think so.
Looks really good.
Looks good.
It's very logically
looks
laid
good.
out.
can we, you want to stop sharing your screen?
Sure.
Might be, I'm hearing disembodied voices here. Yeah, it looks good to me, as far as it goes. Again, I'd like to be sure that the process of starting with the original budgets and arriving at this place is as smooth as possible. Let's put it that way. And then the next step is, okay, and then we decide that we don't, as obviously we have already decided, we don't want to just combine both budgets into one big budget and be done with it. So how does the process work to make the adjustments that we want to make? And it seems to me that this is going to offer us as good a way as any to make those adjustments once all the functionality is in place. Any other opinions?
I think it's headed in the right direction. I think it's going to let us do all the things we want to do. As long as we can all agree on what the things we want to do are.
Do you think there's disagreement at this point, or?
I think we will have lots of discussions,
Well,
as we always do.
well, that's why there's so many of us.
I know.
But I think we want to make sure that whatever.
Well, I think it's important that we have discussions. I don't mean to denigrate that, because we need lots of opinions and then sort through them so that we come out with the best one possible.
Right. Well, I agree. But I think our job now is to make sure that when we have those discussions, that we feel that the tool will accommodate whatever we come up with. So if we see things now that, where we think, well, wait a minute, if we want to do this, how are we going to do it? Now is the time to bring it up.
You know what I think? I think playing with it for a week or so. And maybe we shouldn't have a meeting next week. So maybe we should have a meeting where we get together and try and use the tool. Because I'm a visual, I can't just say right now, oh yeah, this is going to work for us.
Well, I want some more sheets in here before we do that.
Well, right, yeah. Yeah, I'm not, well, I did say next week, but I'm just saying.
A week.
Well,
Yeah.
Jane shot you down on that one, Michelle.
Yeah, a week. To try and get us together because I would look to Jane and Mike, because you are the ones that have been discussing what tool you really would like to use. I haven't been here as long as you have. And so I would look to you to say what was right or wrong with it, because I think you were very vocal in the first round of what you wanted the outcome to be of the previous tool, whatever. So you know where I'm coming from? I don't know if I explained myself.
Well, and Michelle, I'll say I appreciate your confidence, and I think I feel pretty confident saying that Jane and I will feel free to speak up as we are moved to do so. But I would like everyone else to to also think of it as this. Trying to think of this as being something that you yourself might use, and if so,
Yes.
what would you want to do with it? And is it working for you? I mean, yes, Jane and I have ideas, and we certainly have been thinking about it a lot. But I do hope that everyone else, to the extent that you want to anyway, but I hope everyone wants to some extent.
Well, that's why I'm saying I need more time. I
Right.
can't tell you today
Right.
without, this is my first time looking at it. I never had a chance to look at your emails earlier. So,
Right. Well, and
We're
I'd
all
say
looking at it for the first
I'd
time.
like more time too, and I think as Jane says, I'd also like to see more stuff. So my question for Matt, well, I have a couple of questions, but the first is, do you feel that you have enough guidance to keep going and keep building this without
Yes.
further meetings with us for at least a while?
As long as you are okay with me continuing with the file in its current form, meaning, you like the layout of the details tab, you like the layout of the summaries tab, you like how each summary tab there will be multiple for by location. We're gonna have one for each school, we're gonna have one for transportation, we're gonna have one for technology and all those other areas that we talked about. As long as you like the approach that I've shown you today, yes, I have the direction I need. But if for some reason what I've showed you today is not exactly what you're looking for, besides the changes we've already talked about, then I'd like to know that now.
I think,
Well, it doesn't have to be right now, but I'd like to know that soon.
I think it has the flexibility. If I wanted to build an English department, I think it has all the flexibility that I could build an English department.
Yep, and you have the structure that the current districts are using
Right.
as well as a guide. Yeah.
Yep.
So Mike, it sounds
Good.
like you might want to have it that your subcommittee plugs in place for a little bit. And if things come up where you need to call a meeting or they have specific questions, they run them through you and you can pass them on. If it's like, I'm trying to do this, it's not working, because it might just be a quick response back. Or if it starts to seem like it's backing up on the highway, then you can say, hey, maybe we need to have a quick meeting to, try to figure out how we're playing with this. So I mean, that's just my observation.
Well, I think
I-
the other point is everybody needs to well, I'd like to see the thing expanded with the teachers in there before I really did any serious playing with it. But then I think everybody needs to put it on their own computer,
Mhm.
and you can play with it all you want to. You can break it as bad as you want to, and then you delete it and download it again and start over.
Or just save it under a new file name. and
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
Hack that one to
Yeah.
death and you'll always have the original.
Yeah.
right.
That's what I've been doing while you all have been talking. No,
Oh,
it's
I've been doing
great.
that all along.
Matt, no, it's very functional. The filters are very handy to be able
Yeah.
to separate data out and to create new sheets. So I think it's really well done. The teacher sheet, I know, which came from a different meeting about a month ago. I remember seeing that. Are you incorporating that in as a separate sheet, or are you going to be doing any sort of embedding into these lines?
So my initial thinking, and I can be convinced to do something different, but my original thinking was that it would be a different sheet.
Yep.
Just because I like how the details tab flows now, and if you were to embed something additional in there, it wouldn't flow quite as well in my mind, because you'd have just really one area that would be different.
Yep.
So I'm thinking a different tab that would look pretty similar to the list for teachers that we've already looked at, and have the file itself, the other tabs linked to that tab, so that any changes that were made there,
Yep.
you would see it on the other tabs as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
The only concern there is going to be that if you have that tab to make changes, then you got to make sure you're not making changes in the details tab for that teacher's area. I'm going to have to somehow not make that modifiable in that area, so it doesn't eliminate that functionality. But yep, that's what I'm thinking right now. New tab, have it linked, and it should all flow.
Yeah, Matt, I'm going to say that I don't necessarily disagree with your approach, but we started out by saying, well, any changes that people want to make, they would do on the details tab, and they would flow wherever they needed to flow. And now all of a sudden we're saying, oh, okay, we're going to add a separate tab.
Yep.
Where some changes need to be made.
Yep.
And it just,
So
there's a piece of me that's saying, ooh, are we introducing a confusion here that we don't need to?
all right, so if we were to use the details tab, what would you recommend in terms of how to do it? Because you're going to have a list of all these teachers. You're going to have a list of, it's going to have subjects, it's going to have other things. And, would you put
Well,
at the bottom?
what is the information on the teacher tab that we're going to be interested in besides the subject?
Well, you're going to need dollar amount. You're going to need some what they're paid. You're going to have
Right,
to have
but those are already summarized on the detail tab, right?
they are.
So I'm wondering if would it be as simple as, or could it be as simple as simply adding subject to the detail tab? I don't think we need, teacher 1, teacher 2, teacher 3, the way they are in the teachers tab. And personally, I don't see a need to link individual benefits to individual teachers.
Okay.
So if we were to simply take, say the high school teachers or say, middle school at Great Falls, which I guess is one line now. I don't have it right in front of me.
Yep. There'll be one line for regular ed and one line for sped.
And simply break it out into as many lines as would be necessary by subject. Would that make the details tab too confusing, you think?
I don't think so. There's already a lot there. It would be more rows, but it's not going to be a significant amount of new rows compared to what we already have.
Yeah, and
So Matt-
rows are cheap,
Yep.
So Matt, though, is that problematic? I mean, is it problematic to have benefits and stuff tied to it? Because one of the things that's really helpful is if you get the total cost, you know, if you hire someone, you want to know the total cost that it's going to be for that individual and not hunt around for the total cost. So I like having things, you know, benefit linked together so you can see, here's the salary, here's the, you know, the, I don't know if you can go as far as coaching stipend, but you know, here's the insurance benefits and so forth. And then, you know, get the whole picture right there. So
Oh,
that's just me.
So,
yeah, I'm not,
go ahead, Mike.
do we have that now anywhere?
So one of the things that when we were looking at the salary list was I pulled in the salary tables for each of the districts, and the list was populated with each teacher's lane and step, and that linked to the salary table. So
Right,
what added benefit that had was if you wanted to play around with the different steps and lanes for individuals, or if you were to hire a new teacher and you said, well, I want them to be this lane and this step, it would automatically populate their salary amount based on that information.
okay.
That's
But
good.
what about the benefits though?
So the
Do we link
benefits-
benefits in any way?
We started to, and then we got hung up because the Gil Montague approach just made it too difficult. You may recall that they, a few years back, eliminated the link that they had in place between the roster of teachers on the benefits tab and the teacher list on the salaries tab. So you they no longer can easily identify who has what. I mean, I'm sure they could, but for someone like us to go through it and figure that out is not possible without probably their handholding. And you know that and Joanne mentioned that was something they did purposely because they didn't want people to know who had what. They were to look at that
Right,
information.
and I think I remember that when we talked about that at our meeting, we decided we didn't need that information.
Yeah, we originally wanted it if it was easy to do, and then we decided together that it just wasn't worth the effort, so we backtracked on that.
Okay. So I
But
don't
if
think,
we're going to build a budget, we're going to need to know benefits.
Yeah, so we can give it to you at the summary level and the summary level. We don't have it at the by
Right.
person level. at
Or
this
else
point.
we make the assumption that everyone has a family plan, the most expensive family plan.
So that doesn't
Well,
work.
or something. I
That
mean,
isn't
we've
what
talked about,
happens.
sorry, David.
That does not work. To assume the worst is not very good modeling. I mean, that's not what happens.
Can we do a percentage?
Well, what the district does is they know what their actual count is, the Pioneer District, and they consider what the potential would be. And then in the past few years, 10 extra family plans has been funded so that we don't end up losing money on that line. But it's whatever we do, it's important that we understand what the various districts' assumptions are and the way they budget and meet that expense. And then, you know, what ours, if we've got a different idea. But just going straight to the worst case, we could take this thing off the rails if we just assume the
Well,
worst every turn.
And I think we have two different questions here. One is, will we see the actual budgeted amount for benefits for actual employees somewhere? And the answer seems clearly to be yes. It's going to show up somewhere on the region budget details tab, and it'll flow wherever it needs to flow. The other question is, what assumptions should we make if we want to project costs for hiring more teachers in a particular area? And we have had discussions about that, and David's right. Projecting worst case either in salary or in budgets is not done by either district. Joanne talked about, I don't remember all the details. I know we did talk about it at one of our meetings, and Joanne had one way of doing it and Tanya had another way of doing it. and we can talk about what we think is reasonable. We will have to come up with some number for both salaries and benefits. And one way to do it with salaries, and this is kind of looping back to what Matt was talking about, would be to assume hiring people at a certain step and level. And I think Tanya talked about that a little bit, and maybe Joanne did as well. That way we could, instead of picking a dollar number for a cost for a new hire, we could pick a step and level numbers for, and then that would automatically flow to a cost. And I'm open to either approach. It doesn't make a lot of difference to me. Matt has done the work on the other sheet to make it fairly straightforward to simply adjust the step and level so that the numbers flow. And if that can be preserved on what he's building now, that seems nice to me. And other people can chime in and with how useful they think that would be. I don't know, Matt, but that does seem as if it might possibly add more complexity to this budget details sheet, which, you know, we don't want it to get too complex. We want it to be as complex as necessary and not more so, right?
Right.
Yeah, so backing up a little bit, just to respond, here's the reality. When you're looking for a teacher, you know, you really are looking for to meet the needs of the kids. And so you have, you know, the flexibility, you know, even the school committee, or you try to have a range to, you know, hire someone. You're looking for, you know, the most talented and where they fall. And then you look at other parts of your budget. So if I'm trying to get Greg Snedeker because he's a chemistry teacher and he's got all kinds of feathers in his cap and can make a big difference, then I'm going to say, okay, here's what we can do. Because remember, impact bargaining really prohibits you from negotiating separately with any of the teachers. So you have to do it within the realm of that. And you come up with a number. And if you have to make other adjustments and line items in order to fund the position that you're trying, that, you know, the person you're trying to get, you do that. In terms of the, so there's flexibility, you know, that we have to build into that process, and making sure that, you know, the kids are high performing, and so is in our staff, and who we can bring in that will be able to contribute to the staff. In terms of benefits, I would go to the insurance company and I would find out where is everybody now? What's the history, because they have a lot of really good information. And then I would budget from my numbers from the insurance company, because they know who's on what plan, what the projected increase is going to be. They can even give me, when I've asked, you know, give me a 2-year projection. What do you think is going to happen? And, you know, it's a soft number, but it's pretty accurate. So when I've built budgets, I grab that information from them there. And then I do, like David suggested, we have a fudge figure that we put in, because, you know, people get married, people come in and go out. So you have to have your little, you know, some ability to be able to draw some funds to make that smooth out. So I never spent a lot of time on that, because the insurance companies were really good at giving me some really accurate information. So, so the reason I'm saying that is because if we get around to a 6-town regional, let's say that were to happen, or a 5-town, whatever it is, that, you know, we'd look at who's in what, you know, the insurance, who's taking what insurance, a PPO, HMO, whatever, what is the cost of that? What's the likelihood that they're going to stay in that program? And you can put that all together and what the new insurance programs would be. I think you could come up with a pretty accurate number out of the gate. We would just have to figure out, Matt, you know, I think that'd be a separate thing that would be done, and we'd be plugging in the final number. But the data would be coming from, because of HIPAA, you know, it does create a problem. So we can get the raw data from the insurance company we don't need the names.
And I
Well,
agree with Alan.
We have data about numbers of people on different insurance plans from both the districts, don't we?
Right.
Yeah.
But they're coming into one and we'll have different plans or maybe the same plans. And if someone's on an HMO in one district that's Harvard Pilgrim and someone's on an HMO that's Blue Cross Blue Shield, and you look at the costs and what they consider, it's probably fairly easy to figure out which plan they're going to gravitate to or what the money differential is. So I think we'll be plugging in a number rather than having it have to be tight. So I'm kind of rethinking what I was thinking before. Michelle, you were saying something. I'm sorry I
Oh.
interrupted.
Well, I was the same thing when I was doing private doctor practices. The brokers from the insurance companies always gave me my projected insurances, the rates and what they thought the people would be taken for the next year. And I had 150 employees in one practice, so they were pretty good about that. Which I find, David, that it's interesting that we budget 10 extra family plans. Because
Well, it's a pretty good number. I mean, at one point in trying to cut costs, I looked at offering, what private business does is offer a financial incentive to go to your spouse's insurance. And we had so many who were eligible but not on our insurance that it was a several $100,000 expense to pay each employee $2,000 not to take our insurance. The other thing that I think we have going for us here is that were we to combine, merge, whatever, we have the advantage that we're on GIC, we're on Hampshire Insurance Trust. And when Warwick, and I looked at this on behalf of Pioneer a couple of years ago, looked at transitioning to Maya's group insurance, you end up with this period of no man's land called the roll-off, where your old insurance isn't paying for anybody that has continued benefits. Say I had a hip replacement in May and it's still seeing the doctor in July. So you end up self-insuring for this period of time, and it wiped out the 10% cost savings that I was projecting with the massive amount of uncertainty. So I think we will be advantaged by the fact that we won't be changing horses.
Yep.
It also means that we won't be changing horses, even if we see a product, another offering that looks good. The risk involved in that roll-off period, that period of self-insurance, is such that we may just say, that's not a good idea.
Well, there's another
Okay.
there's another facet to this, and that is that the two districts support a different percentage
Mhm.
of the premium.
Yep.
Right.
And we're going to have to deal with that discussion or just bow to 95.
Hey, David,
Okay, well, I think we're getting a little
Ahead.
off track because at this point, we should be focused on what we'd like Matt to do in terms of moving ahead with this spreadsheet. And these are good questions people are raising, but they aren't all directly related to what Matt's working on.
Well, to that end, I think we all feel Matt's headed in the right direction. I would say, from my perspective, rather than taking some time off, I don't know that much about spreadsheets, and I've learned some important things today, and I'd like to continue to. So Michelle, maybe we need to do a little meeting and working on with the spreadsheet without our consultants present.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking, without them.
Yeah, I'm restating that rather
Yeah.
than,
Oh,
And all in one room
yeah.
maybe with more
I
than,
don't mind the distance thing. I mean,
pardon?
I would rather have that kind of meeting with my computer in front of me, sitting in my house. I don't think,
Oh, so everybody bring this, okay, yeah.
Well, do we want to do that with the current version, or do we want to let Matt add some stuff to it and then do it?
I want the teachers.
Let them keep adding, Matt. Make it better.
But that
Okay.
doesn't mean we can't learn. I mean, Michael, we don't all have your skills with the spreadsheet, and I'm saying that we don't have to have this discussion, as you said, in front of Matt and Mark. So let's deal with that issue, and then I'll have something to say.
Okay. Well, Matt, do you want to give a rough estimate? We could either leave it that when you have added, and I get the impression you've got some ideas about things you would like to add to this. And at some point, presumably you'll reach a point where you'll think, okay, I've added what I think needs to be added. I need to get more feedback.
Yeah.
Shall we wait for you to reach that point and then contact me and say, okay, here's what I got. I'm ready to talk with the group again. Do
So
you
would
wanna
that be,
set-
would that be before or after this working session that you were just, that David just brought up a moment ago?
Well, I think that's something that we could decide. Because I get the impression that people want a working session with kind of just us to play around and have people who maybe feel their Excel skills. I'm not sure. I'm not quite, I think we have to
I-
talk about what the purpose of that will be and
I'm
how many
I'm
people will
hearing
be
two
involved.
I'm hearing two different
Independent.
sessions. I'm hearing teach me more about Excel. Just period. Teach me more about Excel. And then I'm up hearing the second one as being working with this spreadsheet. But I'm hearing people say they'd like to learn some more basics so they can take them to this spreadsheet. Am I hearing that wrong?
That's not what I said. I'd use the spreadsheet
Mm-mm.
to learn.
Yeah.
I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing that the subcommittee is going to meet independently and you're going to share, how it's working and trying things. And independent of that, Matt's going to continue seeing what needs to be added. And when he's ready, the subcommittee might have 2 meetings before he contacts you guys and says, hey, I'm ready to go. When do you want to have a meeting? I'll show you what I got.
I hear the latter, what Alan just said.
Okay,
Okay.
so that
Is there any-
means,
Go ahead, Matt.
I was just gonna say, so that means I work and I contact Mike when it's ready to go? Is that the plan?
Right, or at least when
Yeah.
you reach the point where you feel that, you can't keep going without getting more.
Without further direction. Okay. Okay, and in terms of the salaries piece, I think we decided it's gonna be on a new tab. Is that right? Like, do you agree with that approach? I know we
Well,
talked about both.
I'm kind of leaving that up to you.
Okay,
I expressed a small concern about breaking the functionality that all changes will be made on one tab.
Yep.
But that's not, I mean, as long as it's clear where changes should be made, I think that'll work. And again, I don't want to, I'll kind of leave it up to you. I think you know what the requirement is. We want to be able to go in and make changes.
Yep.
We want that to be fairly straightforward. And we
Yep.
want to minimize the possibility that we could screw everything up somehow by doing something in the wrong place.
right,
So,
okay,
I'll
Okay.
leave it up to you to come up with an answer for making all that happen.
okay. And in terms of the benefits piece, is summary level okay at this point? I know we talked about a few different things. It doesn't sound like we have the ability to link it to each teacher easily. So I think we just put a summary table together and allow you to change those numbers if you wanted to. Is that okay as well, or is that too much?
Yeah, I think, well, when you see summary table, as I recall, we have tables that say we have, a family plan with such and such a provider costs X number of dollars, and we have Y number of people on
Right.
that plan.
Right.
And
So
so
when,
you multiply it out and you get the budgeted amount for,
right, but wouldn't you want to
Those
see the
benefits.
impact if that changes to Y+1 or Y+2? Wouldn't you want to see
yes. Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to see that flow? Okay, that's what
I
I'm
think
asking.
so that we can say, well, okay, if we add people, let's assume we add so many people at, to this plan at this level and so many people to this other plan at this other level.
Okay, so then we might be talking three tabs where you're making changes.
Maybe.
Okay.
Again, I mean, or
Okay.
whatever seems most straightforward. I mean, how does everybody else feel about that? We've just made some big decisions here in the last minute or so.
Should we
Run with it.
recap? Should we recap?
Yes, recap.
Okay. So we think it makes, the approach that we just discussed is salary tab's going to be on its own tab so that you can make changes, and that's going to be at the teacher level. So it's going to be 1 row per teacher, just like how you saw in that prior file. It allows you to make the changes necessary to move teachers in and out, change their step and lane, so that it can calculate their salary based on that information. And then also a potential new tab that would have at the summary level, how many different employees have each of the health plans. So like Mike just said, Y amount of people have this health plan. Let's say 100 people have this health plan. What is the dollar impact if that goes to 105, for example, or 102? The ability to make those changes as well. So summarize 2 new tabs, one with the teachers, individual teachers, one with the summary level health plans.
And eliminating a teacher would just be wiping out the salary line cell.
Yep, zeroing it out or deleting it or something like that. Yep.
And
I know you
adding maybe
guys
just
don't like to hear
putting a
that.
new one in at a particular step and lane.
Yep.
How's everybody feel about that?
Good to go.
Good.
That gives you the flexibility you're looking at, even though it would be on a new tab. Looking for, even though it would be on a new tab.
Mhm.
And beyond that, we would have teacher assistants, whatever we call them these days. And-
IAs.
Yeah, yeah. They would be on their own sheet. And then all adjunct employees, meaning janitors, electricians, groundskeepers, night watchmen, whatever, would all be on their own tab.
Is that a question?
Yeah, well, I think that maybe I opened up a can of worms here that nobody wanted to think beyond teachers and administrators. For
So
the
you're
moment,
thinking that there might be other staffing changes in the combined district.
yeah, there's lots of
Okay.
people to run a school.
Are the paraprofessionals or the IAs, are they all paid the same rate, or do they get paid a different rate?
No, they have a salary schedule just like the teachers, years there and stuff. So they're not all at the same rate. Depends on how long they were there, longevity. I have to run to a meeting at town hall, so this has been great. I bow out, but thanks for everyone for contributing. And Casey, or Cassie, however you say it, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Don't you have some
We'll talk later.
suggestions or questions?
Alan, my dad has something he wants to ask you. Please don't run away.
Alan, before you run, very quickly, we received from Mars the consolidated central administration and consolidated high school and middle school staffing for administration. Mike, I forwarded that to you. I don't know if you've posted that
Yes, I did.
on the shared drive. So take a look at that. It's similar in concept to what you saw in the phase 2 report and in the phase 1 report. Also, Mike has talked to NASDAQ, and Alan, you need to get in touch with Mike for that update. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thanks, Mark, for the heads up. Mike, I'll give you a call later on, and thanks for that. And I'll take a look at that and then get back to you. I'll look at the spreadsheets and the information they have. All right. David, are you going or no?
I'm not, but don't tell anybody. I could, okay?
Okay. No, you stay in the meeting. Then you can tell me what's going on. Thanks.
Deal. You could leave the dog, Alan.
Yeah, she goes for the ride.
Okay, so now we're talking about potential new tabs with more data on it. I guess that's a question for the group. Is that, do we want to see the paras? Do we want to see the custodians at the individual level? Do we want to see them at the summary level? Do we not want to see them at all? And it may not be individual per se. It could just be, para 1, para 2. We have to put names in there.
Right, well, we shouldn't put names in there.
Right.
I think
I'm
we need
hearing,
to see the individuals because it's going to attach them to a classroom or a building.
Agree.
It can also be helpful to see the individuals just because if you have some approaching retirement or that have been in the school system for a long time, their salary can make up a large percentage of the salaries. And so that's sort of good to know looking forward also with budget building.
Yeah, but Cass, just so you're aware, the finance directors at the districts prefer that we don't use actual names while we're working on
Oh,
that,
no, no,
so-
no. I wasn't,
Oh.
no, I wasn't, you don't need to use their name, but if you were to just, state high school biology teacher or whatnot, but people knew that teacher was nearing retirement, you wouldn't have to have their name, but you could see, what they made for a salary.
Yep.
Does that make
Yes.
sense? And I apologize, coming into this late, this format seems great. It seems very user-friendly and very accessible. I don't really have any questions right now because I haven't seen the others that have been presented. So I'm just sort of watching and following along.
David,
I don't think we need that kind of granularity. I mean, I don't know what I'd learn diving into that level. I think it's similar to health insurance. I know in my tenure at Pioneer, I've discovered that Pioneer was a school that never laid anybody off, had aides that paraprofessionals whose kid had graduated, moved on, still on the payroll. If that caused us to discover that sort of thing, but
Well, I think we can get some of that granular information from our business directors and principals and superintendents. I mean, we really don't have the knowledge to be able to start saying, well, they only need, X amount of, staff. They're going to know their operations and know how much they need. So it's, we can certainly run scenarios, but I think we're going to have to work with them to have actual, good data to go by.
well, but I guess a question is, we're making assumptions, for example, that the central office will have different staffing requirements if it's all combined than if there's two separate districts. What about food service? What about custodians?
I agree. I just think that the central office is a little easier to be able to make those decisions, whereas when you start getting down into, custodial staff, it may be a little more difficult for us to just kind of make those decisions or to make those assumptions as to what they might need or not need.
Well,
There are standards for how
There
many
are standards,
managers.
Right.
and we can certainly consult with the business offices of the districts. But if we're going to, if we decide that we want to do something other than simply combine the costs of those areas into a single region, we have to have some way of making adjustments to them. And, you know, at the
Right.
teacher level, we're saying, well, if we want to add more teachers, we're going to add, you know, we're going to put them in at a certain step and lane, and that's going to translate into a cost. And at the benefit level, we're going to assume that, you know, X percentage of them will get this benefit and another percentage will get another benefit. And I think Jane's raising what I think is a good point, which is what about the other people, the other employees of the district? Shouldn't we have a similar ability to add or remove based on our assumptions about what will be necessary for a combined region?
Yeah, oh yeah, I'm not disputing that at all. I think
So-
I think that's
So
right.
what's the
I'm
best
just,
way of doing that?
I'm just saying that for us to, you know, propose different scenarios is going to take some communication with the actual operational, you know, the business
Right.
managers, and just to make sure that we're not, you know, making assumptions that don't fit into what is possible. That's all.
Right.
It's not about-
agree.
I would add, having the correct tool to do that, to play around with it, is going to be better as we communicate with them. Because
Absolutely.
otherwise,
Right.
if we just put them in one bucket, then how do you divide it up? So I like the individual, like Mike was saying, you put a teacher in lane one with, you know, benefits and whatever. So I would vote for the individual for all the other custodians, paraprofessionals, food service, whatever.
Okay.
So
Well,
I'm sorry,
Same
Mike.
reason, because you can build on it, or you can just accumulate it all and dump it in. But if you don't have it, you can't do any of that.
Okay. Cassie, you said,
So I actually have to run to a school committee meeting shortly. So I'm gonna have to leave. But I guess, and maybe this is a silly question, but I'm just trying to understand, because I'm jumping in this, you know, kind of in the fifth inning, but the purpose of this is just to present to the full committee in terms of what it would look like to combine the budgets. Is that, I'm just trying to understand, because I guess I'm thinking of it as budget building from the school committee mind when I say breaking it down into positions, but you know, that may not be needed. I'm just trying to understand.
We're trying to
would-
establish a whole new district and determine what they need. So it means we have to figure out what the staffing will be,
Okay.
what the transportation will be,
hmm
which buildings we're going to use for what.
Okay. But this Excel sheet is just the budget per se, what that will look like?
It's
yes,
to allow us to build the budget.
Yes. Okay.
right.
That
And,
answers my question. Thank you.
actually, alternative budgets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Based, one of our assumptions is that a new district might do a number of things that the current districts do not do. And we're not going to, it's not going to be our decision to say, well, we ought to do this and not that. But we want to be in a position to say, well, if we do this, and that means hiring so many more staff, here's the budget implication. If
Okay.
we want to do something else and that means other types of adjustments, here's the budget implication. So that
Yeah, that makes
we're
sense.
really hoping the education subcommittee and actually the public, when we start rolling, you know, meeting with people once we have a little more of this work done, and people throw out ideas, if they say, well, you know, what would it cost to do X? We'll be able to say, well, okay, based on these assumptions that it would require this and that and the other thing to do X, here's what we think it would cost. So that's what this tool is supposed to do.
Okay,
is
great.
allow us
Thank
to
you for
answer
the
that type of question.
clarification. I have to run because I do have a school committee meeting starting shortly. But thank you for inviting me. I will definitely see you all again. I appreciate, you know, being invited on, and this is important work. So thank you for all your time, and I'll see you all soon.
Okay,
Good,
very
thank
good.
you.
Cassie, I'll follow up with you.
Okay, great. Bye-bye.
Okay, so are we done with Matt in the sense that maybe, it sounds to me as if we talked about adding another tab for salaries, another tab for benefits, and it sounds like we're talking about adding another tab for other employees. In other words, when I say salaries, I mean teachers.
Staff, you're adding staff as opposed to teachers.
Yeah, non-teachers.
As
They
opposed to
usually call them,
teachers.
yeah, as opposed to faculty, it's usually faculty and staff, just so you know.
Okay.
Right.
And we think we need a separate tab for staff because
Mhm.
subject won't be a requirement. I'm wondering what the difference between the faculty tab and the staff tab will be. We're both going to be people at a certain step and lane.
Mhm.
I didn't, you lost me.
But it's different salary scales,
Different salary scale. Okay.
right? So there's a different
Okay.
teacher scale from a,
Okay. So
So-
we have a separate tab for staff.
well, I believe there's a different salary scale for the paras than there is for the custodians. Right?
Right.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Would it be
Yeah.
possible to have one tab that had a code indicating which salary scale was to be referenced, or is that too complicated?
Yeah, or there
I
could be,
think separate sheets are just as easy.
I do too.
Okay,
okay, that's fine.
so basically for each separate salary scale, there will be a separate sheet.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. So Mike, I'm just building this in my mind as we're talking, how we would use this tool. You know, we could pick X amount of custodians or X amount of food service for one building, you know? And I think that would be the easiest way for all of us to be able to use the tool interactively.
Okay,
I think
So,
Matt's on the right track, you know. I just want to give you positive, Matt. You're doing a great job. We're just trying to think of what we need.
Yep, no, I understand. This is
okay.
good, this is good discussion.
So, I guess I'm just trying to be clear that we are all agreed. Or do we still feel there's things we haven't talked about or things we haven't resolved?
I think we're all agreed that this is the next great step and maybe the final
Yes.
one.
Okay,
Yep.
okay, good. And Matt, do you feel comfortable that you are a mind reader, I hear.
Do I feel
But,
comfortable? No, I think I understand. There hasn't been any work done on what the data for those different salary scales yet. So, that will add some time to the turnaround time.
Okay,
The stuff that's already been done, that's not a heavy lift at this point to get that stuff figured out. So, for example, creating a location for Gill Elementary, creating a tab for Gill Elementary, and linking that to the other tabs. That's pretty straightforward. Creating a tab for technology and linking it to the other tabs. That's pretty straightforward. Getting the salaries in there that we've already worked on. That's pretty straightforward. But then getting the new salary scale set up for these other salary scales, that's going to be just a little bit more work. And also probably we'll have to maybe run by the finance directors to make sure I have the correct list of, I don't want to say employees, but that I've included the right amount of them. In case it doesn't tie out for some reason, I might need to do that. So I'm just trying to set your expectations a little bit because that will require a little bit more turnaround time.
Well, hopefully there's not as many of the other staff,
Yeah,
as there
No.
were of the teachers and
The
in
te-
different levels and all that. I don't think there will be.
I agree.
Like, how many levels of custodian and food service could there be? You know what I mean?
I agree.
None.
I agree. So what I'm thinking right now, and Mike, let me know if this works for you. I can give you an update at the end of the week as to where I am. I would be surprised if I were done at that point. But I can give you an update where I am, and then maybe you can give me direction from there as to where you want to go. But I'll just keep plugging away and try and get this turned around as quickly as I can.
Okay, okay, that sounds good. So I think I'm expecting it's going to take more than a week.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just I want to keep you updated.
Okay. Yeah, if you want to do that, and we'll just that sounds fine. That sounds fine.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
okay. Now, as far as the committee meeting to, I'm not. I mean, the way I see it, we all have a copy of the spreadsheet, and we can play around with it and try to understand it. And in my own experience, I have a certain amount of experience, and I have learned an awful lot from the internet. I found that the internet is a mixed bag in terms of learning stuff, but learning about things like Excel, there's a lot of great resources out there.
Yeah.
And you can ask pretty specific questions and get pretty specific answers that can be very helpful. So, I just tossed that out, that it's a great way to learn. If people want to get together to have a meeting to kind of learn in a group, that sounds okay with me. But I'm not going to push for that. I know that we all have a number of meetings to go to and other things to do. So I'll leave it up to other people whether they think that would be useful.
I don't necessarily need to meet to learn Excel. I was suggesting we may meet in a group to come up with a new district scenario. And using the tool, say, oh, we need to pick from there, we need to pick from there, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, I agree with you, Michelle. I think, yes, but I see that as something we'll do once a tool is done. Maybe we would give it a test run before the
See,
tool
I'm
is done,
thinking-
but it needs to be more done than it is now.
Yeah, we need another step, but I'm thinking, and Matt's going to work on that. But at some point, that's what we need to do to see if we need more.
Okay.
Because I can't answer the question right now to Matt when he asks, what more do you need?
Right.
That's
Well,
too
that's
tough
why
for
I'm
me.
thinking that what we should do is wait until Matt feels that he, based on what he's heard that we want, that he's basically done, that he's got a tool
Yeah.
that does those things. And then we meet with him, he goes over with what we have, and then we have a session, depending on timing, we might meet just ourselves and play with it and say, okay, can we do everything we want to be able to do?
Yeah, and I'll email Jane if I have any question.
There you go.
Maybe I'll answer.
How does that sound to everybody?
Well, it sounds good, but I'm thinking that what we need before we even start playing around with the tool is a list of what it is we really want.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
If we all agree that we want one superintendent, that's check mark one block taken care of.
Well, isn't
We
this,
want 10
Jane,
English teachers or 8 English teachers.
Jane, that's gonna have to come from the education subcommittee.
Well, some of it's gonna have. to
Some of
come
it.
I
from
mean,
them.
we're not in a
But we-
position, I mean, we're not in positions to be making decisions on like what the size of the English department is without consulting the English department.
Oh, but you're from the education side. We're from the finance side. We do this all the time.
I mean, we don't know how much
Right.
staffing goes into a cafeteria. I mean, that
We do
when
too.
you,
We
when
have
you,
the data.
well,
all-
no, when you scale it up to 400 students from a high school of 200, you don't necessarily know. You're going to have to talk with the head of dining services.
No, I
Absolutely.
don't.
Oh, Jane, come on.
My mother ran a
You cannot make those decisions.
my
unilaterally.
mother ran a
You're gonna-
district.
You're gonna get strung
cafeteria. I
out.
already
You're
know
gonna
that.
get hung out to dry if you do.
Well, Jane, I think what we
Well,
need to do is, why don't you
No,
come
you
up
can
with that
pick
list?
whatever examples you want. I think we need a criteria list. And it might not be the one that we get from education, but we need a list. We need to start with it and develop our own. And then we can change
Correct.
it when they tell us what they are planning.
Correct, but we're
They're
not.
not even close to telling us what they're planning.
No, but I'm just trying to get to that when we make assumptions, we can't make assumptions sort of unilaterally thinking that we know what we're doing. I mean, when you scale up a high school from 200 to 400, you're going to run into issues within the dining services in terms of logistics. Do you move to having two different lunches, possibly? I mean, there's all sorts of things that go on that you can't just make assumptions like, well, I know what they need and how much staffing they're going to need. We can't do that. I see us forming, getting
Well,
like
I
Guys,
think we
I mean,
have-
I think
smaller
we're on
groups
track
that
here.
reach out to those constituents. so
I
that
think,
we
I
know
think you're
what we're
both
doing.
right. Jane is right that we need a list. Greg is right that in order to come up with that list, we might need to talk with the business departments and or other people at the districts. I think that will be an agenda item. Coming up with that list, starting to come up with that list will be an agenda item for a future meeting. And at that point, we can talk about what is necessary to make that happen.
Mike, I think I saw Mark's hand up a few minutes ago. Mark, did you?
Yeah, thank you, Michelle.
He couldn't get
So-
his word in.
So you have from Mars a consolidated central staff. Use that to play with your Excel spreadsheets. You have the consolidated high school administrative and middle school administrative from Mars. Play with that. What we want to know is the tool flexible enough to allow you to play with different scenarios, and use that as the first test. As Matt gets more and more data into the file, then we can expand that to teachers, to paraprofessionals, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll remind you that we've been focused so much on the expenditure budget. We also have a revenue budget. We have assessments, and the tool is to give you the functionality to make certain assumptions on revenues, put that in, and then run assessment scenarios. So it's not just focusing like we've done the last month on expenditures. It's a bigger tool than just the budget. Just saying.
Good points, good points.
Do you
And
see
Mark, I
that
would,
being part of that spreadsheet, or do you see the income side as being another spreadsheet?
I see that as another spreadsheet. And then the revenues are linked to maybe even a bigger, not a bigger, maybe even a different budget summary spreadsheet. If you go back to Mike's original design, there are different focus points for different functionalities. And it all comes together into a bigger budget file. So
Mhm.
Mark, I think you make a good point that if people want to play with the spreadsheet that we have now, they could use those documents from Mars to see how comfortable they feel plugging that information into this spreadsheet. No,
So right
Go
now,
through the
Matt
process.
showed you the two lines for the two superintendents. One was what, 140, the other was 120. Mars has one superintendent with one number. So play with it.
yeah, I think that's a good idea. That's enough information to say, you know, if I wanted to have the budget reflect what Mars is telling us we need, can I make that happen? And if the answer is yes, then we're happy. And if the answer is no, then we got work to do. And I will say that if people have trouble and want to have another session with Mark and Matt, before Matt contacts me and says he's done, let me know. Or if you want to have a group session, just ourselves, in the meantime, you know, feel free to say, you know, hey, I think we ought to do this. But I think what I'm hearing is that I won't plan to have another meeting unless I hear from someone before I hear from Matt that he's done and here's the product that he wants us to look at. And at that point, I might even allow, you know, a week or so for people to receive it and look at it so that it isn't just a question of opening it up an hour before the meeting.
All right.
We actually get a chance to play with it. And I expect that's going to take a little while. That whole thing is going to take a little while based on what's been going on so far. I mean,
And I have a question. Would it be easy to find what Mark said on the Google Drive or website or whatever, the documents, so that we can utilize the documents from how many times ago? Is this your
All the-
third? Is that
all-
your-
all the documents that we have received are on the Google Drive.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Whether it's
But I
easy
have to go
find-
back how many years? 2 or 3?
Well, the ones that we've received since the Abrahams Group was hired back in April are on the
No,
Google
I'm
Drive.
talking about what Mark said. Are we calling it, Mark, what did you say? First session, not first grant or second grant?
Phases.
Phases, yeah, thank you, Greg.
Let me clarify.
Yeah,
So you have a 2001 file
okay,
this
that's what I,
month on the combined central services.
okay,
In the phase 2 report, we had different numbers in there, but the same concept. In the phase 1 report, we had different numbers in, not the same concept because it was modeled. It wasn't taking a look and actually physically going through each position and making a suggested recommendation and then coming up with a dollar figure. Also, you're going to have the combined updated salary scale that eventually you're going to be able to pull the numbers off of that scale. Mars didn't have that available to them when they came up with a suggested dollar amount.
So, but the
Okay.
previous report and the appendixes that came with it are all on the STRPB website. They're not they're not linked off of our page, but
They're not on the Google
it's
Drive.
linked off one of the menu items.
they're not on the
website.
Google Drive, they're on the, okay, and it's all Mars, a lot of it is Mars work, in addition to what you did this year, okay.
You can find the last report in its own, it has its own page.
Okay,
And the appendices are also linked. The appendices that are on the Google Drive are linked on that page. So you can find them. It's all centralized on one page.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay. So are we done with this item or have we still got more?
I was just going to ask David when he compared the insurance companies to horses, if he was insinuating that insurance companies take us for a ride.
I don't remember, well, I'm not sure.
Okay, well, we should move on. I've got a report. We had talked about having Taryn Leduc from NASDAQ come and talk to us about the report. I emailed her, she emailed me back saying she wanted to talk on the phone about next steps. So we had a telephone conversation. And basically there were two pieces of information that I got from her. The first is that she would be able to discuss the report. But if we wanted more than the scope of if we wanted to discuss more than the scope of the report, that would require some form of new contract with NASDAQ. She mentioned $195 a contract hour, and that would need to be arranged through the executive director of NASDAQ. The second piece was that any discussion that she would have about the report that she did would be done with the entity that contracted NASDAQ to do the report, which is not the STRPB and is certainly not the STRPB subcommittee. So the upshot was that she told me that we could invite her to come and talk to us, but there wouldn't be a lot that she would be able to say under those circumstances. And so I thanked her very much, and that was that. I confirmed that if we do have follow-up questions, we could try to go through. And at one point, she said they've been, I mean, Mark knows the answer to this, I think. She seemed a little unclear whether she had been contracted by the Abrahams Group or Mars. But basically, we would have to go through them if we have questions about what she's done. And then if they feel that the questions we have are beyond the scope of their report, then they would talk about a new contract.
Hey, Mike, I think the contract is through Gil Montague. I mean, it was a part of, I believe it was a line item in the grant. That was.
Well,
Yeah.
whatever.
Am I wrong with that, Mark? I thought we had that included.
If there was a line item, I didn't know about it because I put in my proposal.
Or maybe it was a part of your proposal. That's what it was. Okay.
Okay.
It was certainly a part of Mark's proposal.
Yeah, I thought it was important to have an updated enrollment projection. And I tried to contract with them directly. They were uncomfortable to contract with me because they had never contracted with me before. They had contracted with Mars before on this project, phase 2, and with Mars on other projects. So could they contract with Mars? And Steve and I said, sure. I mean, it just made it easier. But for her to say that because she's contracting with Mars and not the board, to present to the board is not proper, I find that hard to believe. And I find it hard to believe that she would charge more money to answer questions. That's just me being frank with you. So that explains the administrative structure. And I'm also bothered by a comment Mike made 2 weeks ago when he said that these projections that we just received really can't be relied upon because of COVID-19. So why didn't they say that right up front and we wouldn't have contracted with them? So the reliability of their projections now come into question.
Did you speak to Karen about that, Mike, directly about that very issue? Because
Well,
I mean, I reported what I knew, but I'm wondering if you had any new information regarding the projections.
I didn't talk to her. I mean, the phone conversation in my mind was to talk about next steps. And I was feeling that I didn't really feel, I wasn't prepared with a list of questions to go over with her because I felt that it was most appropriate that she meet with all of us because different people have different questions and I didn't want to, I didn't feel I necessarily could speak for everyone and didn't feel prepared to speak for everyone. So when she basically said, well, I can't even really talk to you. I didn't, I wasn't ready to say, well, but what about this and what about that? I might have been able to get her to say some things. You know how it is when you're talking to someone on the phone. But I really, that hadn't been my goal going in. And, I think what we have. I mean, at this point, I think that if we want to put together some questions that we would like to have answered, and I think that the effect of COVID-19 is one that I have, that we should put them together and ask Mark or whoever, Jay Barry at Mars, to follow up with NESDEC and try to get answers. But I think if we do want to follow up, we should, as a subcommittee, get together a list of our questions, and then go through the channels that she described. I think it's not quite accurate to say that she said that to answer any questions would require more money. It was more, I think she felt that some of what we were looking for might be out of the scope of what they had done, and that and she felt like she needed to keep her answers within the scope of what they had done. So if we were asking her to go outside of that, that would be a new arrangement with NESDEC. At one point, she mentioned that they are, they are a business and they do have to make money.
It sounds to me that she was hesitant. Even when I spoke to her, that she was hesitant to make time to meet with us, and I think it does come down to billing. But regardless, I think we could. I would like a little more clarity, and so I think we could ask some questions through Mars. It sounds like it, since that's the channel. So compile our questions, and they don't have to be even a lot. I mean, my one overarching question is, did they put any offsets, or did they tweak their algorithm in terms of their projections to take into some account of COVID, and if so, what? I mean, did they smooth out the numbers going back, looking at trend lines from 2 or 3 years ago, and try to make projections going forward, taking into account, COVID and what possibly could happen, which they're just thinking of Gil Montague, if they're getting 50% of their students back from the drop from last year, is that something that they took into an account?
Or from the graph, the answer is no.
Right. Well, maybe. I mean, she did mention something about.
But then
maybe,
she told you that they expect their recovery to take anywhere from 3 to 5 years, and she told me the same
correct.
thing. But the
Right.
graph doesn't reflect that, so.
It doesn't reflect that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so then my hunch is that when I asked her that we would need obviously more years going forward to be able to smooth out those numbers. That's what she agreed with, is that once she had October numbers and we have another set of numbers to put in for this next year, that, you know, that's going to obviously change the graph in terms of the projections.
I'll remind you, though, that in 3 other studies, Southern Berkshire, Berkshire Hills, and either Quabog or Quabbin, within the last 6 months, NESDEC showed enrollment increases in all 3 districts. Same COVID, same company, different regions, increased enrollment. And yours decreased enrollment.
Okay, well,
It doesn't make sense. It's not passing the smell test to me.
well, what's the best way for us to put together our questions? I mean, do we need to meet, or can we say, I think, you know, obviously we have open meeting considerations. But we can authorize one of us to collect questions, I believe. And I don't know, Greg, you want to volunteer? You seem kind of interested in this. I don't want to, you know, on the other hand, I figure you're probably busy, but
I'm fine. No, I'm fine with that. I mean, now that town meeting's over, I have a little more time.
I mean, if we all send our stuff to you, and if you felt that it was pretty clear what people were asking about, and then just took it from there.
Yeah, I could send it on to Mars. I mean, probably send it to Stephen Barry. Is that what?
I guess. I mean, that's the thing. I'm not really
I'm asking
familiar with
Mark.
Mars.
Does that sound like a plan?
You can send it to Steve and me.
Okay.
Let Steve and I talk about it. I don't want to speak for Steve, but I don't think he'll have a problem with that at all.
No, we're talking about questioning the 3 NESDEC reports that we got a couple weeks ago or last week or whenever it was.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
I find them totally confusing.
Well, I just think there's so many moving parts. I mean, to David's point, I think in our last larger meeting, there's a lot of transition. There's a lot of migration happening right now. I mean, I was at the Northern Rail proposal this morning, the meeting for looking into running a rail service from Albany to Boston, and there was a lot of talk about how population is migrating right now, and people are coming west. People are coming down, actually, from Vermont, because they can't find housing. So they're relocating to Western Mass and then working up in Southern Vermont. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of shifting going on.
Lynn. You're muted.
You're
Lynn.
muted.
Lynn, you're muted.
I just wanted to comment that I just got the most recent quarterly reports from the Board of Realtors for the Pioneer Valley, Franklin County, Hampshire County, and Hampden County. What they're showing is that in Hampshire and Hampden County, that they had in each of those counties an increase of sales in the quarter of over 20% in those 2 quarters. In Franklin County, and I believe this is because of lack of inventory, sales were down 10%. However, in all 3 counties, prices were up between 20 and 30% on the quarter alone. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, well, private equity is driving a lot of that.
Yeah.
Well, but private equity as defined by, I own an expensive house in the eastern part of the state, I'm bailing and I'm using my equity to, in Warwick, we're seeing 40% is closer to the truth.
Okay, and you're absolutely right on. Just a little story of somebody in Marblehead, with a tiny little nothing house. And they put it on the market just because they thought this is craziness. They're going to go live on a boat. And there they had multiple offers on the very first day, and the property went for $250,000 over asking price.
Yeah, I think we're getting off topic though, probably at this point.
Yes, but anyway, but that relates to the migration situation.
And relates to our uncertain future heavily.
Right, which all of which we can try to take into account when we try to project into the future. So shall we say that, Greg, should we give people a week to get questions to you?
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
fine.
So by next Tuesday, everybody, if you got questions about the DESDEC report, get them to Greg and he'll take it from there.
Okay.
Do we have anything else?
I'm done.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
I think we're almost at the 2-hour mark.
I'll second that.
I'll third it.
Okay, well, hey, guys, good meeting, though. I think we got a lot done. And I will just, basically, at this point, the plan is to wait on Matt, and if people feel we need a meeting before I've called one, just let me know, please. Okay?
All right. Thank you, Matt and Mark.
Have a good
Okay,
week or two.
Thank you,
You
guys.
too.
You too.
Motion's been made to adjourn. Roll call vote. Jane Dutcher,
Yes.
Aye.
Greg Staniker,
Yes, aye.
Lynn Reynolds, aye. Michelle Geruso,
Aye.
and David Young.
Aye.
And Mike Naughton, aye. Thank you, everybody. Oh, I never asked who was taking minutes today.
Not me.
Ah, it must be you.
Uh-oh.
You got the recording, Mike.
Yeah,
Oh.
I do have the recording.
Welcome to my world, Mike.
It's very painful, I have to say.
Yeah, well,
Good job.
okay.
He's okay.
All right, bye.
Aye.
Okay.